Also, I heard Mr. Jones say today that policy 1100 he was told that policy 1100 was not being adhered to. If the superintendent, if you could just clarify if this policy is being adhered to. I want to know, as a voting board member who voted on this in 2009 and also again in 2011 and then again readopted in 2012, I want to make sure my vote, for this policy, if I voted for a policy, that this policy is being adhered to, that we're following guidelines, that we're going through the SLC process, that we have a school parent organization, and that we have a PLA. So are we following the policy 1100, or have that policy been suspended and board members haven't been aware of that?
So, yeah, policy 1100, is it
Policy
is it still
1100
enforced?
is still in effect. We have, as we discussed at length at the last business meeting, we have a committee and a process by which we're looking to enhance, not abolish the SLC process. TM Morris is leading that. I'm sure that I believe she's even briefed the constituent committee as to how we're approaching that, and we'll, continue to use that constituent committee as policymakers and informants to improve 1100, but it is not abolished.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
Just a follow-up to that, Madam Superintendent. Over the summer, we had hires of people being principals in the district, and if we refer to this policy say that every principal that is hired must go through an SLC process. This is a board that is selected by the principal of the school, or the school community. Must have a student rep, must have a staff member, must have a union rep, and also must have somebody from the administration. So, with that said, you said that you're creating a new form of policy, but this is the policy on the books. So is it clear to say that the district haven't been following a policy that the district signed off on as a policy?
So, Mr. Lewis, your question is this is a statement?
This is a question. I just want to be clear that we're saying the superintendent said there's another policy that Ms. Morris and her is working on. So I want to be clear that what Mr. Jones said is clear, that the district have not been following the policy 1100.
So the policy is still enforced, but it is not being enforced at this time? Is that what's happening?
No, there's one clause of the policy that has to do with how do we recruit, select, train, and place the SLC members, and how do they weigh in on our hiring process. That piece of it, we're looking to revise. Ms. Morris briefed the constituent committee this last month about the process for doing it, as well as soliciting input. I understand you weren't able to attend that committee meeting, but I'm sure she'll be happy to update you offline.
Madam Chair.
Just a minute.
SLC process.
Mr. Lewis, did you have any other questions at this time?
Well, what I'm concerned with is if this is a policy already put in place, and I'm a sitting board member, voted on this as a policy, and that the district is not adhering to this policy, I have a serious concern with that, because my name was on this as a vote, and I voted for this policy. So I have a concern, because in 2009, when I first got on this board, I voted for this policy. In 2010, when we revisited this policy, I voted on this policy. In 2012, I voted on this policy. So if this is a policy that's put in place, and the district allow board members to vote on this, and the state reviewed it, and the superintendent agreed with this, that this should be a policy that the district followed during the hiring.
Madam Chair.
If this is not being followed, I have a problem with it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lewis. Thank you for clarifying that. I'm sure that
Madam Chair, may I just make
also echo.
I just have one response.
Yes,
Mr. Lewis,
yes.
as the superintendent highlighted, we are not in violation of not following the policy. We are modifying parts of the policy, which is the discretion that the superintendent holds And once that modification is clearly delineated, we'll ensure that the board is appropriately briefed. But legally, we are not in violation of not following policy.
So I would need clarification on, excuse me, can we please have order so we can discuss? Why is it, we are not clear on why the district is not in violation if the policy is enforced, but the, what the policy mandates is not actually happening now?
Very briefly, what the superintendent has done and what we're doing internally is reviewing the policy to ensure that we can meet and look at the best interest of the community, of the interaction with the district. So we have not at all removed the policy, or we have not stated that we are not going to implement a policy that speaks to this. We have the ability from time to time to examine and to evaluate and to ensure that we can hopefully encompass some of the best practices to further the engagement of the community within the interest of the district. That's what we're undertaking right now. While there might be clearly some uncomfortable bumps in the road, I represent to you that at the end of the day, what we're ensuring to do is to try to maximize and increase and ensure that there will be a very vibrant ability for the community to be involved at that capacity. So we have not at all removed this policy. We are modifying and evaluating it.
Thank you, Ms. Hitchcock. So what may be out of place here is simply a timeline that we can grasp, because I don't think that it is productive for an entire school year to go by, and we are now moving into the second month of the school year. So when do we see this issue being resolved?
We agree, and we shared at the business meeting, and Ms. Morris shared at the constituent committee, which she can share with the whole board, a timeline for gaining input. We wanted to balance efficiency with getting genuine input from this body. So with this fall, we will revise what we want to and ensure that that body has weigh-in on the hiring decisions.
Okay, but I mean, we can have further, or we should have further discussion on this, because I think what people are actually looking for some real hard numbers in terms of when this is going to happen.
I think we shared a timeline. Ms. Morris, is that correct? And perhaps we can share it with the broader board in writing at the, after this meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, I
Yes,
know that there's other reports.
We have a number of people who have been waiting to speak. Mr. Kinney, okay, so Mr. Hassan, Mr. Kinney, and then I'd like to go back to Dr. McCreary, who we asked to hold this question.
Yeah, so when reviewing that policy, there were some things that were stated tonight that I personally don't see written inside the policy. So I don't know if it's a matter of comparing past practice to what's actually written in the document. I personally do have a lot of questions that I would like to have answers to, and respectfully, if you would allow me to, Madam Chair, I would like to defer my questions in a formal capacity to the constituent committee, as it was mentioned that they will be handling this, Madam Chair.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes. Mr. Kinney?
I'm sorry. So in the policy under E and F, it says encouraging and providing opportunities for parent participation and consultation and decision-making at the school and district levels. F, sharing with the parent the mandatory budget allocation for parental involvement activities and programs at the school and district levels, and allowing for collaborative decision-making as to how the money will be spent. As of right now, that's not occurring. So, I mean, that's clearly in the policy. That's clearly something that's being discussed right now, and that is not, what's going on right now is not a participation where parents and district are making the decisions on what's in the best interest of children in that school building. So I think that's something that I think Marquise is bringing up, and that's something that us as a constituent service committee that we're trying to address. We decided to, we heard the hue and cry of people here in the, who come to the board meetings, who also speak to us afterwards, and say, well, we want to be a partner with the school in determining two things. One is who our school leader is going to be, and also the programs that effectuate our young people. And that makes sense. It makes sense. They're the customer, AKA the customer, if we're going to use that verbiage. They're the customers, so we have to get customer input on what we plan to do with their children and how we plan to educate them. So Tia Morris and myself and the other constituent service committee decided to, and then also Ms. Merritt, decided to do a couple of things. One is to talk about how do we reinstitute the SOC process to make sure parents are more involved. Also to talk with existing SLCs that are effective and that are doing exactly what we want them to do. So we did have a conversation, well not we, but Tia had a conversation with an existing SLC down on Hawkins Street. We also want to invite other people who are SLCs who know the policy, who have seen it practice in the past, who see exactly what makes the most sense. Reach out to me. I would love to invite you to a constituent service committee. I'm doing open invitation now. A constituent service committee so you can give us input as to what it looked like, what makes the most sense, how should we change it to make sure parents can be satisfied with bringing their child inside the school and they had enough input as to what they want to see their school building looks like. So it's an open invitation. Please speak to me afterwards. But we want to make sure that parents are partners in this process. We don't want to alienate anybody because at the end of the day, that's your child. You have a right to know exactly what's going on and who your school leader is.
Thank you, Mr. Kinney. Dr. McCreary?
Thank you. My question is on a completely different topic, and it speaks to the superintendent's deck, page number 10, about early childhood education. So last week during the business meeting, there was information provided about the new standards and evaluation systems that will be put in place for the educators that provide the early childhood education. But one thing that I heard tonight, which is actually pretty interesting, I've been in education for a very long time, and I really haven't found holistically in this country models that quote-unquote close an achievement gap. Right? So we do really good things of supporting students, but actually making up those number of years by the time that graduation comes around, it is very difficult, and everyone in education would agree with this. So my question then is, if we're providing early childhood education, which is a great thing, we have these new standards, which is a great thing, and these evaluations for teachers, yet at the end of the day, we don't have a system in place to be able to gauge if these students that went through this process are kindergarten ready. So we're spending money, having resources, and not knowing if our students are on grade level even before they start within our system, and we know the results 12 years later.
Madam Chair?
So I guess my question is, what evaluation will we have in place? What is the timeline for that moving forward?
Great question. I think there has been a lot of work and a lot of debate in the early childhood field about how to ensure we have developmentally appropriate assessments that don't lead us to do things that may not be good for our littlest kids, because we know that the only thing that's standard about child development is that it's not standard. I mean, even if you have 3 kids, you can see that they all develop, but at the same time, we want to make sure we're moving towards kindergarten readiness. So there's just been a lot of work in this, a lot of debate. That debate has led, I think, to some good tools. So we already have in the field something called GOLD and something called DRA2, and we're actually, we've piloted both quite extensively to see what kind of information we receive from both. There's a third assessment that's been developed by the Jumpstart founder, who now runs something called Accelero Learning, which is also in pilot. We have used all 3 at different centers. We have sort of seen there are pros and cons to each of the 3. We're in the process of kind of crosswalking that formal assessment data with our own observational data, things that you can do more like reading records to see which we think is actually most accurate. And then that will help us, I think, develop a more standard measure that will allow us to see not only our early childhood centers scoring well on the Ecker scale, which is important, that's the environmental piece, but how are we doing in terms of delivering them kindergarten ready at the end of the process without falling into some of the traps that can sometimes promote in terms of bad practices around standardized tests. That's the trick. So they are in full pilot form, if you will, now across the district. Our intention is to use those pilots with observational data and also have a really important conversation about the pitfalls. But our hope is to implement something system-wide by next fall. And we'd be happy to share the results of those pilots and what we learned from them.
Yeah, and I guess that would be my follow-up, if we can have some data for the scales, what works and what we'll be using district-wide, and/or holding the private providers accountable to and for.
Madam Chair, if I may just add to Dr. McCreary's question. The gold assessment, because I am very familiar with it, it has widely held expectations for children from birth to beyond kindergarten. And so every private provider in district schools, they all are supposed to be using gold. And it tells you for individual children where they fall in that scale, and that can be used by a school as a sort of kindergarten readiness tool. There's also teacher practices that are measured by Office of Early Childhood. You have SELA, which is the literacy instrument. You have PCMI, which is the math instrument. And every year, classrooms are evaluated, teacher practices are looked at, and that kindergarten readiness is definitely on everybody's mind when they're leaving early childhood classrooms. I believe the district or Office of Early Childhood also does a kindergarten observation survey, so that when children enter kindergarten coming from a preschool, whether private provider or in district, that they're looking for certain benchmarks to be met.
Thank you.
You are.
Dr. McCreary, that was it? Okay, thank you. I'd like to move now to Ms. Matthias. You have a brief report from the NJSBA Legislative Committee.
Yes, there are, and in the interest of time, I'm also going to send this out via email, but there are a couple of bills that the SBA is asking board members to keep an eye on and/or support. And I will highlight the most important ones. One is A4084, and that's a bill that authorizes school districts that receive federal impact to establish a federal impact aid reserve account. I don't believe our district is in that realm, because that's mostly for districts who have military students. But they are asking all districts, even if it does not directly affect you, to support, as well as A4177, which establishes a charter school review board in DOE to review charter school applications, and NJSBA is seeking a seat on that board. They're also asking for the process to include a voter approval measure. And those were the most important. The other two things that came out of that meeting: Anti-Bullying Week is coming up in October, the 7th through the 11th, and School Violence Week is coming up October 21st through the 25th. So we just wanted to make sure that the district was aware of it. And these are state mandated weeks of acknowledgement, and schools are expected to have activities revolving around bullying and anti-violence.
Okay, so do we, in district, do we have the, does anyone know, aware if we do have those programs at those appropriate times in district?
Yes, we've had them in the past, and I will follow up to ensure that the planning is underway.
Okay, thank you very much. Is that it?
That's the end of my SBA report, but I did want to ask a question.
Okay, may I ask you a question first?
Sure.
Okay, so when you say support for these particular bills, what particular support were they asking us to?
They're asking boards to just send a resolution, and if you go on NJSBA's website, they have template resolutions that can be adopted, or you can write your own, but just a resolution in support of the bill and sent to the appropriate legislators.
Okay, so you can follow up with us with the draft resolutions, or at least a summary of it, so we can.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry, you had a question?
Just update on the web administration. I know we had talked a little bit before about updating the web and making it more user-friendly and getting more information out there, and just where that is at in the list of things to do.
Good question. I will commit to getting a timeline to you. It's more complicated than, but it's a good question.
Mr. Lewis, if I can, I just want to piggyback off of that, and then I'll turn it over to you. Just based on the information that Ms. Gregory revealed to us when she spoke about what happens when she goes to the website and tries to get information, I just want to be sure that that's something that's going to be followed up on immediately.
It will, and just to that note, we'll send a link as early as tomorrow morning where you can go directly to every single school's progress report. It's fully operational. It's right on the landing page. So I'm not sure precisely what part about which she was speaking. Of course, we'll investigate. But if you are a parent at Abington School and you would want to know attendance data, achievement data, retention data, growth data, on our landing page, it says school snapshots. You click on the snapshot, you click on the school, and the data comes right up. So I just tried it right this second. What might have happened is there may be an older version that leads to the dead ends that she has described, which I will certainly investigate. If that's the case, we should just turn off that button. As far as student achievement data from last school year, it has been coming out in drips and drabs, but we have not received official state data. And I'll happily share with you the timeline that the state has placed. This is common. Newark is not the only place, but typically you get individual student data, and then there's a kind of appeals and scrubbing process that the state undergoes. So it has not been published. So the snapshots you see are from 2 years ago. Our goal is to get those snapshots refreshed by mid-October. In order for us to accomplish that, the state has to meet certain deadlines. And that is not an uncommon back and forth that occurs between states and districts, because student achievement data always has a great deal of lag time. It's for a host of reasons that are a little bit frustrating for everyone, but it's not a matter of not wanting to share it. That's just how it works.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
I had last week asked about the hiring practices of the district, and I also said that my report that I received was 146 workers was laid off on January 1st. 96 of them was Norkers, 115 of them was Essex County residents, 5 of them was Caucasian, the rest of them was African American and Latino. I asked for a report of how many since we start school, how many African American and Latinos been hired in the district, and how many from Newark have been hired since this current layoff. Can I please get that data by the end of the week? Miss, huh? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Friday. Thank you. Also,
So you have a response that you're satisfied with, that you will get that?
they said Friday.
Okay.
Also, is it now practice in the district that you have to Oprah test scores? Because I heard one of the speakers say that they had the Oprah test scores now. Is that the new practice of the district or something?
The district doesn't make Oprah requests. People make Oprah requests. You'd have to ask them why they did that. I have no idea.
So I think the question is it necessary for parents?
Yes.
Again, we'll happily send the link on our landing page that says Abington Elementary, where you can click and see more transparent data than has ever been shared on individual school basis ever, period. So why individuals feel the need to Oprah test scores is, you'd have to ask them.
So the information is available, and it should not be necessary then to Oprah that
Correct.
information. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Okay, but I think the question is, Okay, so the information should be readily available without anyone having to make an Oprah request. Thank you.
And also, Madam,
To clarify, not for, I'm sorry, I wanted to, with due respect, I wanted to clarify. Last year's data we don't have. No one has it, other than certain passwords that have been given via the testing company, which is unofficial data. We've explained this to principals and often can lead to all kinds of false negatives and false positives. So last year's data we just don't have. That's true statewide. So people might be, frustrated with that. I don't know. That may be what has prompting it, but I just want to clarify. When we get last year's student achievement, of course, we will refresh all of those snapshots. We don't have it yet.
Mr. Lewis?
also, Madam Superintendent, I've been asking for months for the list of consultants and how much the consultants being paid. Are there consultants who have direct responsibility that's doing day-to-day operation, direct responsibility? Do we have consultants who are responsible for day-to-day operation?
Mr. Lewis, I'll ensure that I speak to you personally to ensure that we get you information that we can appropriately give to you and answer that thoroughly at sidebar following this meeting.
I mean, I think that should. Since
Can
the
we give you a
committee even-
list of the consultants? Yes, we can. I'm unaware of any list that was not provided to you. To ensure that you receive the information you're seeking, I'd like to personally ensure that I understand the request, and I'll speak to you as soon as the meeting's over to take personal responsibility to get you that information.
Okay.
Thank you. I have, are there any other questions, comments, old and new business? Yes, Ms. Matthias and then Mr. Kenny, and
I wanted to ask a question about Race to the Top, because I know it wasn't in the deck last week, so we didn't really get to discuss it. How is this application going to be different from the one that we did last year?
Good question. What Ms. Merritt and I had brainstormed was that we could provide to you in writing an update, because we're in the process of trying to figure that out.
Okay.
The short answer is not a lot. The basic concepts will be similar. There are two things that might appear to be slightly revised. One is we're proposing growing the high school piece of it. At the time, the high school part was smaller. And the other is that with regard to specific partners, we got negative points for being vague and saying who we would work with. And we are going to be much more explicit in this application with the type of partners that we would name. The application gives you points for that. We lost points.
Okay.
And a lot of those partners are ones that you have reviewed and seen through the presentations that Dr. Perkins has done. They've gone through the PQS process. We have an advantage this year of naming them because they've already gone through our process. Those are the main pieces, but we will work together to highlight for you in writing what the updates are, and to the extent that there's any particular school advisory board member that wants a deeper briefing on the application because it's critical, we can work with Ms. Merritt to ensure that happens.
Okay. And I'm sorry, just one more. The enrollment for this year has gone up more than what was originally expected, which is always a good thing, but because of that, some schools were not able to start off with all their materials. And so is there guidance given to the schools on how to deal with that situation, and will we be in a better position to prepare for that next year so that we start off on the right foot?
Just like we did in previous years, the October 15th enrollment is the only point at which we feel very comfortable saying, yes, enrollment's up, no, enrollment's down. I know you hear lots of stories. This school is having an enrollment boon, and this school is having an enrollment valley. A lot of that turns out to be not necessarily accurate at this point, because there are outreach that need to be made to see if students didn't return. There are students who walk in and attend for 2 days and then leave. So we don't make any major policy shifts until we do our visual audit that we do every year, where we train our teams. The teams go out, they literally go and count students. If you don't do that, you can overcorrect or undercorrect. So those official adjustments won't be made. Last year, I can provide you with that big, long data sheet that we were actually not very off by very much. My expectation is that probably will be true this year as well. But that said, if there are particular spaces that are obviously understaffed, we will address those immediately, and we can always recorrect for it on October 15th.
Thank you. Mr. Kenny?
I just want to get I guess, a snapshot and weekly or daily, or even monthly, regarding our attendance and tardy of our students. Reason being, we made a big push regarding attendance being a critical issue. 300 school hours combined, 300,000 school days combined last year is a testament to a lot of things, but we just need our kids in our school buildings. So I guess the question is, given that we made some changes in terms of personnel, I would love to find out on a weekly basis in our weekly board packages, what schools are doing in terms of meet their the tardy and attendance for each school building inside our district. And I know we have to wait to October 15th to get an accurate report. If I just looked at my calendar, that's about 30 days. And I would love to know where our students are. If there are a number of students that are sitting home waiting for their first or second or third or 14th choice, we need to find them, see if they have enrolled into our school or to a different school district, but we need to know where they are. We also need to know what those parents' plans are to get those kids enrolled so they won't be too far behind once that child starts school. I guess the worst thing to have is a child start school in October and they missed an entire month of learning. And so if there's something that we can do on a district level in terms of in our weekly board packages to see where we are in terms of numbers, as well as the tardiness, because there was another issue where I went to one of our elementary schools to drop off some bags, and I saw students actually going to school closer to 10 o'clock. And I'm actually talking about school buses dropping off school children inside their schools maybe an hour after school actually begins. So I just want to get an idea in terms of how many students are attending school, we're missing an hour worth of learning, and how is that recorded, and what are we doing to make sure that those students get enough learning time or seat time to ensure they get exactly what they deserve.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny. I just want to remind all board members who are asking questions this evening to please follow up with an email to be sure that your questions are clearly understood, so that the information you get is what you seek, and to be sure that you are able to document these requests.
Last point, there's
Yes.
a second point, and I'm finished. I visited Milburn High School website, up to date, family friendly, data is current, and I would love to model ourselves after other school districts who may be meeting or exceeding the benchmarks that we should have for ourselves, so we can make sure that we have, at the very least, our NAEP scores. Well, I mean, I'm looking at 2011 on some of the school district websites that we have, and that's actually from students who began school in 2010.
2 points. One, on the attendance piece, we can explore adding an attendance roundup part to the weekly briefing. I can't commit to actually having the data refreshed every week. I would suggest the constituent committee potentially get a briefing on how attendance data is reported, and just how much work it took to even get the transparency we just gave. But I can commit to trying to figure out, one, how we communicate promising practices, and two, doing some sort of roundup potentially monthly. But I would respectfully request that maybe that become an agenda item on the constituent committee meeting, as opposed to going through all of the details right now, because what I don't want to do is overpromise and underdeliver. I'd rather get folks what they need, but also, acknowledge that the data systems, just to get the data aggregated the way that you all have it this year was a tremendous lift. And that, again, is not uncommon. And I don't want to commit to something we can't deliver on. But I think the request is completely right on target. So I want to see what we can get you, as opposed to saying what we can't. As far as the websites, I'm happily point that to the person that is working on it. I just want to point out that NAEP data is only aggregated if you hit a certain size. We don't get a Newark NAEP score. Actually, we would like to. And in fact, I've personally sent letters to the folks that do NAEP to say, we're so close to your number. It would be great to get an aggregated NAEP score, because in some ways it is more accurate than anything else. We don't meet the number of student threshold. We actually have ideas about how we might be able to fix that. For example, if we were able to go in with all the charters, we would hit the benchmark, but you have to actually hit 40,000 test takers in order for NAEP to aggregate it to your city. It would be awesome if we could do that. It's actually, that's a much better measure than what we have currently.
Madam,
Thank you. Ms. Perillo and then Mr. Lewis.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I just wanted to say I'm sorry for coming late. I was attending my daughter's back-to-school night, which was a success. I am happy to see that so many parents came out and the auditorium was full to capacity. But now
What school?
First Avenue School.
Thank you.
Now I have two questions back to the after-school program. I wanted to know what will be the outreach for the children to sign up to these programs that we are actually, that we voted on. And my second question is, what is the plan B if the programs are full to its capacity and the parents want to enroll their children?
The PQS is actually just pre-qualification. It's not about recruiting and outreach. It sounds like we need to do a more detailed briefing on the after-school piece.
And lastly, I just want to give a public service announcement saying that the First Avenue School is going to have their health fair November 21st, and they would like the board members and Madam Chair and the superintendent to attend their health fair November 21st.
Thank you. We will need that in writing. If you can just send an email, that would be helpful. Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
Madam Chair, just real quick, what department is in charge of home instruction? If we get
I'm sorry, in charge
home
of-
instruction.
Home instruction.
It falls in Dr. Perkins.
That falls under our chief
Under
academic
Dr.
officer. You say yes? Okay, thank you. I'll talk to you afterwards, Ms. Also, there's two things. I know that in the last few weeks, we had staff, new appointments, promotions, and some board members haven't been, introduced to anyone. And I know that we have a new assistant superintendent, I was told. Madam Superintendent, if you can introduce our new assistant superintendent. Our new assistant superintendent. As of,
So, I don't know. Oh, there she is. Akua Stovall, who many have met previously, served as a teacher quality specialist under Dr. Hardrick. I shared previously with this body that we felt the high schools had too many high schools under one person's purview. Mr. Haggerty, I think, has done a great job. At 18 was a lot. So we were able to take the network that Ms. Hardrick and Ms. Stovall previously supervised and split it, and then move some of Mr. Haggerty's high schools to Dr. Hardrick. Ms. Stovall's bio and information has been shared previously because she's a teacher quality specialist, but we can resend it. My apologies. My assumption was this body had met her previously, so we missed that, and my apologies for that.
and I know,
Thank you.
And just to add on to that, I know our chair lady have been strongly requesting for the last month an org chart. If the board can receive that as soon as possible, so we can know who's responsible for what departments and what's their responsibilities and roles are as well.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you. If I may, and the organizational chart is very important, but I do need to bring something else to the floor, and that is the fact that we are now going into October. We've had 2 board meetings, and we still don't have a schedule for the year of board meetings, which means that neither the board nor the community know for sure what dates and where the board meetings will be held. We can make some assumptions about when they will be held, but that's just assumptions, and we don't know where they will be held. So it's just, I guess the question is why. This is, to me, is unheard of. I've never experienced not having the schedule for the board meetings, and both the board members, the community, as well as the host administrators at the schools where the board meetings are held really need this information. And I think that not having it is basically been reflected in the fact that at the business meeting last week, there was no one in attendance. I don't want to say no one. There were a few individuals in attendance, and even at this meeting that the audience, when I don't mean audience, the community attendance is extremely, extremely low, and I've been asked about this over and over the last week and a half or so, and I just expected that we would have it, and we don't have it. So I do need to know, we need to know what the holdup is on that, because we need it.
We agree there should be no additional holdup.
Thank you. Anyone else old or new business? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I have Mr. Lewis, second by Senator. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.